Just saying hell yeah to Grand Funk, that's all.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your host, Sean Hartman, part-time roadie, freelance pyrotechnician, and volunteer firefighter.
You do a lot for the community, Sean. That's kind.
Yeah, I'm here from start to finish.
I'm co-host Jeremy Ruggles, and I'm trying my hand at writing a nice nonfiction book about a kitty cat.
Oh. Aww.
It's a very unlucky kitty cat who's died 8 times, and now he's on his 9th alive.
9th alive, huh?
Yeah.
His 9th time being alive. Interesting.
Yeah.
The stakes are high.
So what are you calling it?
A 9th alive, duh.
Yeah. Like, look forward to cracking that one open.
I'm sure you do.
I'm co-host Peter Cook, and I'm starting a real estate company that's going to be so big it knocks Remax off the map. We're calling it Granmax.
I saw that one from a mile away.
Can't fail.
And with us, enjoying my joke, is a returning guest to the podcast. He is the owner of Permanent Records in Los Angeles. Welcome back to I'd Buy That for $1, Lance Barresi.
Hey, fellas, it's great to be back.
Great to have you back, Lance. Last time you talked a little Chicago Transit Authority with us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, had to represent the roots in the first go round, and now we're getting into the nitty gritty of what I'm really all about, which is private press records of generally the rock variety. And what is awesome about this Granmax record is not only that it's an incredible album sonically, but that it actually qualifies for the criteria of I'd Buy That for $1, unlike almost every other private press rock record that's worth listening to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, are there other private press hard rock albums that are like this easy to find? It seems like this might be kind of a one-off in that regard a little bit.
It is definitely an odd one, and it doesn't make any sense to me why it is as inexpensive as it is. I find it regularly. I pick it. It's the kind of record that anybody looking for private press records in general would see the album art and buy it without hearing it, without even needing to hear it, because it just looks like it's going to be great. If you like Hawkwind, you're going to be like, ooh, I think I need this thing that looks like it might sound like Hawkwind. And it doesn't really sound like Hawkwind, not exactly anyway, but it is one of the very few private press LPs in the rock world, especially from, the mid to late 70s, that is actually listenable from front to back and really, really enjoyable. And I don't think it will remain inexpensive for long, but it has been inexpensive and fairly common, especially for a private press record.
Yeah, this is their debut album, A 9th Alive, the Granmax debut from 1976 on Pacific Records. Where do we want to start to give them a taste of this dollar bin magic?
Let's just get right into one of the best titled tracks on the album, Glitter Boots Boogie.
All right, that's side B, track 3. Well, that was some heavy rock. We haven't done a lot of hard rock on the podcast, and we've never done a Private Press hard rock album. And I couldn't find a whole lot about this album, Lance. Do you know much about it?
You know, the extent of my knowledge about Granmax and this album in particular begins and ends with what I can read in the on the liner notes on the back cover, and obviously, you know, what's listed, the information listed on Discogs. But luckily, I found somebody who can tell us a lot more about this album. His name's Tim McCorkle.
Whoa.
Tim McCorkle?
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Yeah, what do you need? I'll do the best I can, man.
Do you want to tell our audience what your relation to Granmax is?
Well, I'm actually, my brother and I, he was a drummer, I'm the bass player, and we're the actual, with Steve guitar, the three of us started Granmax.
Wow.
And so I got a brother team going here. And yeah, you know, and we just started it. And then we got lucky and linked up with a promoter, Chris Fritz out of the Midwest. You might have heard of him. He could Google it, Midwest Productions. And they started a small label. They signed us, got us on a lot of big shows, Ted Nugent Rush, whatever, you name it. And we did this album, and then we did Kiss Heaven Goodbye, and the rest is history.
Wow. So the band was based out of, was it Kansas City, Missouri? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's Kansas City. Actually, it's Liberty, which is a small subdivision outside of Kansas City, about 8-10 miles. And but it's basically Kansas City. A lot of people think we're from Nebraska, and we're not. And what happens with that is the Kiss Heaven Goodbye. I know we're not talking about that, but it was mastered up in Omaha, Nebraska. I think Sunset Sound Studios, and that's why they think we're from there, I think.
Oh, your second album, Kiss Heaven Goodbye?
Right. And that's why they think we're from Nebraska. We're not. We're from Liberty. We're from Kansas City only.
Yeah, I saw a few different music blogs from back in the day that seem to all be repeating each other and saying the wrong city. So
Well,
that's one of the downsides of the internet.
right.
Well, Tim, you're here to set the record straight, and Missouri represent. That's another reason why I wanted to talk about this Granmax record. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri originally, and anytime I find a record from Missouri, especially a rock record from the 60s or 70s, it's coming home with me because I got a little home state pride, as I'm sure we all do. You all talk about Michigan quite a bit, and we all know all the great rock bands from Michigan, of course, especially Detroit. Missouri doesn't have so much to talk about, and Granmax is one of the few and one of the best.
Yeah, you got Granmax and JPT Scare Band.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. And you're from St. Louis, so the rock band Missouri.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, see, we started with Pacific and Panama, came out with our first record, and then Chris Fitz found Missouri on the same label. And if you look on their album, on one of the album covers, he's got a Granmax T-shirt on, Ron West.
Oh, no way. I never noticed that.
Yeah, and we played St. Louis one time in some club, but Yeah, so we came out first, and then Missouri came out on the same label from Kansas City with Chris Fritz.
Yeah.
Is what had happened. And actually, Missouri used to open up for us 2 or 3 times, and then they went off on their own and had their Moving On hit. And
Yeah, Moving On is Missouri. Yeah.
and but if there's one album cover, you'll see a Granmax T-shirt that Ron West is wearing. I think Chris probably made him wear it, but
Cross promotion.
yeah. And so you're from St. Louis, I get that. That's REO Speedwagon. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. They were huge there. Yeah, that's something I did want to ask you about, Tim. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, co-hosts, but what were some of the other local Missouri bands that you were playing with on the rig back then?
Well, when we got with Chris Fritz, I mean, I was 19. My brother was the drummer. I was a bass player. He's 20, 21. Our first show was with Ted Nugent headline. He just came out with Stranglehold.
Wow.
10,000 seat hall, Municipal Auditorium in Kansas City. It was our first show. Okay, I'm 19. I'm a little nervous, right?
Yeah.
Rush came out with Caress of Steel, played second, and we got to open the show. All right. So at that point, we didn't really play with too many local bands around Kansas City. It was just more, he sent us out to Omaha, Nebraska, play with Black Oak, Arkansas, Bob Seger Hart, whatever. Or we headlined, or we did a few shows, quite a bit with Ted and Rush. Okay, and it could have been separate. We did Rush for the Caress of Steel tour and the 2112 when they came out with that tour. They called Caress of Steel the Down the Tubes tour. I don't know if you knew that, but they were. And yeah, and so at that point, you hit a level where you just start doing that, And we played headlined Memorial Hall 2 or 3 times and sold it out in Kansas City. We were pretty popular there. Yeah.
Incredible. What can you tell us any more about the label Panama and like how those records were distributed? And because as a guy from Missouri, I've been seeing that Missouri record, the self-titled Missouri record from 1977, just to be clear about what we're talking about here. I've been seeing that since I was a kid. It's in every used record store. There is at least one cheap copy of the self-titled Missouri record. And that's one that I think may actually be worth talking about on a future episode, fellas. Wink, wink. But what was the deal with Panama?
I was just going to ask, because I had said it's on Pacific at the beginning, but yeah, I see it's both Pacific and Panama. It's on both labels.
I think what happened, like I said, I was only 19 at the time, and you try to get what you can get, and Chris Fritz is a big promoter with New West Productions. I mean, they did everybody. He started Pacific. And I think when Missouri came on, then they somehow, money wise, you move things in a different company and just turned it into Panama, but it was the same label. Okay, kind of. And then Missouri got signed with, I think it was Chrysalis, if I remember right, on their first record.
Big label.
Yeah, so it started with Pacific with us, and then at Panama when he added on Missouri. And then, of course, they got signed with Chrysalis, and then we moved on actually to, you lose a singer after that, and then you go to L.A. and you know the band War, right? Of course.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But their management team, Jerry Goldstein and Steve Gold, signed us and took us out there for a while, and that didn't last too long, but it was a cool deal. So it's kind of what happened. Yeah.
Wild. And just to clarify, Chris Fritz was also, what was he managing REO Speedwagon at the time too, or what else was he doing?
No, he wasn't managing them, but he did all the high concerts in the whole Midwest and Kansas City. He did Fleetwood Mac, REO, Ted Nugent, all the stadium shows, and he kind of just discovered us and said, "I'm going to, start this record company, Pacific." We were the first band with the first album that he ever did as a project, I think,
Yeah.
And we did. And then we did the Kiss album after that, and then he did Missouri, and then after that, I don't know. We split we parted ways after that. But he was a huge promoter. If you Google it, you'll see Chris Fritz. He did everything in the Midwest with New West Productions, and yeah. So why wouldn't you go with it? Kind of thing. And
Yeah, that sounds like it had to have been pretty exciting, especially at 19, like you said, just
yeah,
seemingly getting introduced as the heavy hitter local band with all this opportunity in front of you.
yeah. I was just a kid. I mean,
It's a good way to spend your late teens, that's for sure.
well, yeah.
I did some reading up on Chris Fritz, actually.
Oh, good.
And I found he helped organize the infamous Ozark Music Festival,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah.
that drew at least 200,000 people, with some estimates as high as 350,000 people.
Yeah.
And if you look at the lineup, it was bonkers. It was some of the bigger names on it: the Eagles, Aerosmith, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Bob Seger, Charlie Daniels. Wolfman Jack was like the MC for the festival.
Ow!
And yeah.
I mean, man, he had us on every show he could put us on. We did a stadium show in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was, I think it was they're trying to get the most money out of Black Oak, Arkansas at the end in 1975, 6. Bob Seger, Hart, Mahogany Rush, and us. I mean, he was just trying to do it, but he had the power to do it, and it helped us out.
Did you all ever play the Ozark Music Festival?
No, we did not do that. I won't lie to you. Say, yeah, we did. Google it. No, no, we won't do that. No, because you guys are smart enough. You'll get research. I know. I live in Nashville, and I'll tell you what, you cannot sit in a bar or a restaurant here and lie about yourself, because everybody here is a musician that knows everybody,
Of course. Were you all being courted by major labels when you were active, Tim?
No. The only thing we did, like I said, is War's Management, Jerry Goldstein and Steve Gold, that had War, and they signed us, took us out there and did that. And then after that, we broke up. And to me, it wasn't the same band anyway. So after the Kiss Heaven Goodbye album, we split up, and it was over with after that. As far as I'm concerned, it just became a different band,
Yeah. And then did you, your brother or Steve, end up going on to play in any other bands after Granmax?
We did some stuff in L.A., and we kind of called it Granmax, but it just wasn't the same. We played the Troubadour, every club out there, Roxy, Rainbow, Gazzar's, you name it. And it just never happened after that. And then after about 1989, I kind of went off and started jamming with Robert Sarzo out of Hurricane, which is Rudy Sarzo's brother. And he wanted to put a band together. He really liked it. And we jammed a few times, and then that just didn't work out. And then, of course, when the other guys found out, you know how it goes. And, well, you're out of here and you're doing this, you're doing that. So we just kind of all disbanded after that,
Yeah.
I was trying to move on, and I thought that's pretty cool with Robert Sarzo at that time in '89. Rudy's playing with Ozzy, and man, and we had Terry Dunn out of Banshee. I don't know if you heard of Banshee, the heavy metal band, rock band Banshee.
Yeah,
he played with us for a while. I got him. I knew him since I was 16, and got him in, and we played together a while out there, and he formed Banshee after that, and they signed with Atlantic, and we're still friends today. We talked yesterday, actually. So he's a great guy, great guitar player, and it's just a lot of history, but it just never happened after that, after the Granmax, after the Kiss Heaven Goodbye album. It just kind of went, it fell apart. You got 4 guys together, 3 or 4 that work, and once you can't replace some people,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting. Let's get to another song, though, before we get any further into this impromptu interview. Let's do Ceiling Wall next, side B, track 2.
Every day, I know you're lying, but I know I've gotta stay. Every time I see you crying, well, I've got to find a better way. When you see me on down the street, what will you say? And when you find that you're sitting on the ceiling wall, well, you've got to find a better way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I know that I've gotta stay. And when you find that you're sitting on a ceiling wall, well, I've got to find a better way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I know that I've gotta stay. And when you find that you're sitting on a ceiling wall, well, I've got to find a better way. No more cheating, no more fighting. I'm here to stay. No more lying, no more crying. Well, I've got to find a better way.
That song is a good example of something I wanted to ask you about, Tim, and that is contemporaries of yours that I mentioned earlier who were based out of Kansas City, Missouri. I don't know if you would have known them at back in the mid 70s, because I think they didn't really play out much, but the JPT Scare Band, they were known for really stretching out these long jams that would go on for 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes. It seems that Granmax is very focused on song, like the structure is very tight. It's like clean and tight, I've noticed, with for hard rock. Was that a conscious decision to stay song focused?
Well, yeah, we played with those guys in 2011. We had a reunion, and they played with us. Very good band. They're a super band. Yeah, to me, it depends on the riff. At that time, you try to keep a song, our songs, within no more than 4 minutes, with 3 minutes, because usually the first riff is what catches you. But sometimes, you get jamming on a song and it just goes on and on. You just do it, you think it sounds, you like what you hear. So some of them are longer than others. We weren't perfect songwriters at all, but we just did the best we could. But we were, try to keep it within 3.5 to 4 minutes. Does that make sense? What I said?
Yeah. Yeah, well, sometimes, you start writing and ideas can start to take and hold, and it's sort of, you don't even have control of it anymore. It's like, I know that can go.
Like Leonard Skinner did a couple of their songs at the end, they get jamming and jamming and jamming. And then we were actually more of a live band, and we actually sounded way better than we did on a record. It was just live. You couldn't capture it. We didn't have our first album, A Ninth Alive, I think it was $1,100, and it was recorded in a cave. And it's like nothing, to do that, and it was very cheap recording. And so we had to go with what we had, it's all we had to work with. So, but live, it wasn't even the same band. I mean, it's like, wow, you guys sound so much better. We, and if you actually listen to the ninth song. That's why it's called The Ninth Alive. I mean, to me, in one way, if you crank it up, to me, it sounds better than it does the recording part of it, and that's why we put it on there, because we thought, well, we like that. That sounds better than the 9 other songs we did, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Studio can sometimes hinder like just letting loose.
Yeah. So that's what we were, more of a live band, and we just never really actually got captured live on a recording. You can't do it for $1,100. I mean, you can, I guess, but you follow me. It doesn't do it justice, but then again, it's all in the songs. But I think there's some actually potential in some of those songs. If I redid it today, I actually went over today and kind of redid one of them, Glitter Boots Boogie. And when I crank up my Friedman with my man, I'm like, well, I can redo this, something like that. Yeah.
So were the songs much different in a live setting? Was there any significant changes? Did you stretch out any sections or anything like that?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah, sure. We're talking 47 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, naturally, you're going to make a little bit of changes. I don't think the same way as I do 19. My wife thinks I do. She's like, you still think like 19? No, I don't. You know what I'm saying? But and then, yeah, you grow, and and that, and you think, man, actually, that's a cool riff. Every song in a rock song actually starts with a riff, kind of. And it starts with a kind of a riff, and how you get going, or you get a melody going, and you put it together. Yeah, but I actually went over today. My wife has her own business, and it's different. It's a cooking school, but I jam over there on Sundays, and I can crank it up. And I started playing Glitter Boots Boogie, and man, I'm like, I can work with this and redo it, and I think it'd be a really, really cool song now. Yeah, absolutely.
So when the band was starting, was the idea just like, let's write some songs and see what happens? Was there an intention of we want to like play this kind of music, or was there any bands that were influences for all of you guys in particular at that time? Like, what was the concept when you first started Granmax?
Yeah, I think, well, the influence was the three of us were playing with a couple other guys in a copy tune band, Stonehenge or something. We played copy tunes, and then we wanted to break off and write our own music, and we wanted to become something successful, and if we could. So we were at a stick show, and Steve, our guitar player, Steve Myers, went up and contacted Chris Fritz and said, I got a band and we can do this. And somehow convinced him to come see us. And yeah, we wanted to write our own music and become somebody. Yeah, absolutely. We believed in ourselves. My brother was a drummer. I was a bass player. I actually used to play guitar, but I played bass at the time. And we believed in ourselves. My brother and I've been playing all our life. My whole history of my family. My dad played guitar. His dad played, whatever. And so we have a musical history in our family, and we just believed in ourselves.
That's great.
Which records or which bands were you listening to the most back in '76 or before the formation of Grandmax?
I liked REO, like Bachman Turner Overdrive was a big one for me. Grand Funk Railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michigan's finest.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Grand Funk, Bachman Turner, more of the 3-piece kind of bands, 4-piece,
Yeah, and I thought I was hearing some like kind of garage rock influences and maybe like prog rock here and there. Is that stuff you were into?
Yeah, I mean, we liked all kinds of music. I love jazz. Like now, I'd do anything, But yeah, I mean, anything. Actually, it had a lot of funk in us, and if you can kind of tell a little bit. But I like trapeze, Deep Purple, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, Trapeze, the Medusa album.
Yeah, Glenn Hughes, sure, and then influences come from there. Yeah, sure.
So one other quick question I wanted to ask, Tim, is obviously we're talking about A Ninth Alive because it falls into the I'd buy that for $1 criteria of being purchasable for less than $5 or potentially findable in a dollar bin at a record store. And that's something that Kiss Heaven Goodbye, the second album, doesn't have going for it. Do you have any idea why A Ninth Alive is seemingly more common than Kiss Heaven Goodbye? Were more copies pressed of this first album than the second one? Or is it just that the supply is the same, but demand is higher for Kiss Heaven Goodbye, and those records are just in collections and not findable out in the wild these days?
Wow. Well, the old saying is we got a singer, which was Nick Christopher, because I kind of wasn't cutting it, so to speak, and he took my job. That's fine, but I think that's part of it. Wasn't the best singer on her, but I was just did the best I could do for my age because nobody else was there. At the same time, A Ninth Alive had a lot more praise. It sold 50, 40, 50,000 that I know of, which is not a lot.
That's not bad though.
Because they only pressed 2,000 copies of it. I don't know why it went viral, expansion like that. We all don't know why, but it did, but it only had 2,000 copies pressed on it.
That was the second album.
Yeah, and Fritz had an opportunity from a German company over there that wanted to press it and send it out, and they were just going to give us $2,000 and press it. We wanted to do it. He didn't want to do it. He goes, "Oh, Atlantic will sign you," and they never did. So, but as far as the first, I think it's because there's a lot more copies, and I think that's part of why, I guess, is all I can say. Nobody really knows why. The second one was only pressed with 2,000 copies. I think that's why it's a little more rare, but I'm shocked that it sold. I've seen it $550 for out of Japan. I'm shocked. Like, why is this? I don't get it. But
Supply and demand.
yeah, I'm not going to complain. It's it is worldwide, but it's is what it is. It's just what do you do?
Well,
kind of like that thing.
That explains it perfectly. I had no idea A Ninth Alive sold in the tens of thousands. That's pretty phenomenal, Tim.
It hit 45, 50,000 the last I heard from Fritz, but that was in 76 or whatever. And it, he had it distributed out at some point enough that it probably did that, and even the Kiss album, when it came out, it was sold for $6. You're saying 5 or under. Can't we just knock $1 off on it?
Back in the day, it was only, come on, guys. It was only $6 back in 1978.
Came out at Capers Corner, $6. I mean, let's just knock $1 off. We're good. Because these people that are buying it for 5 or 4 or 3 or 100, I see it. You've seen it, and it's not a lot.
Yeah, right.
I'm not getting anything off of that. I don't get anything off of that. They're just selling it like and I've sold a few of the ones I had for that, and I get it off of that. But if they sell it, it's just a personal thing, and I get that. But this is not a record company doing that. This is just personal. So, yeah, man.
Well, you mentioned earlier that Granmax was a better live band, so let's listen to the live cut on this album, Let Me Know, which is side B, track 4.
The reason the album is called A Ninth Alive.
Woo! Come on, let me see it. Come on, you guys want it?
Well, Tim, I think whoever told you you weren't good enough to be the singer in Granmax was dead wrong.
Well, they didn't really say it that way. I just, I got replaced, and actually, I was a little relieved for your job because there was a lot of pressure. But and then again, I think I think I have a voice, and over time, I would have been very good at it. And my personal feeling is, I don't think we should have ever changed from a three-piece. You either go downhill or not, and left it alone. But that's the way I feel. But I respect. Thank you for your compliment, man. I got a lot of criticism off that album, and it's okay. It just makes you better.
Like you had said earlier, you can really hear the power in that live recording. It's a really good sonically produced live track.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's got like more edge than a lot of the rest of the album. I can definitely hear what you're saying about it being a live band and not like really capturing that in the studio with the rest of the tracks, because that one's got some oomph, some power.
Yeah.
And the only way I even noticed it was a live track the first time I heard it is because of the crowd cheering at the end there. Tim, you said y'all were performing in front of 5,000 or so people at that recording. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a 4,000. It's 3,500 seat, and we sold 500 over standing room only. We did that twice. And to me, if you're doing it twice, you got a little something there.
I would say so.
Otherwise, you're talking a 4,000 seat hall, and you don't do that. I mean, you just don't. If it doesn't work the first time, they're not going to come the second time.
Right.
So I'm proud of it. Sure, we've done a lot of stuff. Well, part of it's on a photo shoot, and I'm not going to say which album cover, but whatever.
There's only one photo on that.
Here's the deal. Here's the thing. We were so broke. That's what I was trying to tell you guys. We're little kids. We're young guys, man. We made all our own equipment. We made our own cabinets, not heads but cabinets. I had 815s for bass, own Marshall cabinets. Photo shoot we're doing. We made our own bond pots. We used 1/4-inch steel, welded, half a pound of gunpowder on each side of the stage, opening for Ted Nugent Rush in a 10,000 seat hall. That works. The side monitors out. When we did the album cover for I know we're not talking about our second, we used the same thing in a 1,100 seat. We learned not what to do, but not what not to do. See? And I'm telling you, and it blew the backs off the cabinets.
Oh, no.
Every speaker, if you ever look on it, but I mean, and then Channel 5 News was in the same building in Kansas City. We did this at 5:15. The 5 o'clock news was on. They came on. I'm serious. They came on and they said, "We just think Kansas City just had an earthquake." Then they came on 5 minutes later when, in the building said Granmax was doing a photo shoot off bomb pots. It literally, I mean, we were opening for Nazareth in 4 days. We had to pay $1,500 for new speakers in every cabinet. It just, yeah.
Whoop.
But you got a good story out of it, at least.
Another one. I'm opening for Ted Nugent. We're opening for Ted Nugent, Paducah, Kentucky. Little tiny boxing arena. He only sold 75,000 copies of Stranglehold. He didn't know where it was going to go, and it only held 2,000 people. We wanted to use those bomb pots there. They said no. So we're doing our sound check like at 4 o'clock, and his band's coming through. Here's Rob Grange, Derek St. Holmes walking through our equipment to get to we had to share the dressing room. It was that little. I'm playing my bass, and Rob Grange, I hope I can say this, and you'll block it. He goes, "You're rattling my balls, man." I'll never forget that. That's something you never forget. I'm 19, 20 years old. He goes, "You're rattling my balls." I'll never forget. I just think it's kind of funny like you guys, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that quote should have been used on the hype sticker for Kiss Heaven Goodbye, and you would have sold 40 or 50,000 copies of that one.
Well, this was during a Ninth Alive,
Yeah,
during a
course.
Ninth Alive, yeah.
Yeah, if anybody is curious as to what that looks like, the Kansas City earthquake photo shoot, go look at the album cover of Kiss Heaven Goodbye, and you get a good idea.
If you look at I had 8/15s for bass, and you'll see, like, I think my two cabinets, and it moves on. You'll see the cracks in the speakers.
Oh, wow.
It literally blew the back off the Marshall cabinets on the guitar. They're screwed in, every 6 inches. The backs were about 2.5 inches blown off the back of the cabinet. So it went through the speaker, blew the back off the speaker. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God. It was unbelievable. Our hearing, you're looking at each other going, what the? And you can see each other. Oh my God. It blew the candle winds out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you can see on the photo. Yeah.
Eat your heart out, Spinal Tap.
Oh, I don't know.
That's
I said, you want to know what to do, it's what not to do. But, you learn from experience, and,
Just one other quick little side note here. Another unusual element of this Granmax album is that all the copies that were pressed on white vinyl, which is pretty unusual for any record of that time at all, especially a private press. Was there any particular reason why the album was pressed on white vinyl, Tim?
Well, it was a nickel more at that time an album. I knew that, and Chris Fritz did it as a promotional thing.
Yeah.
You just kind of do what you do. And then we found out he had a little friend come up. We didn't even know it. They didn't ask us, didn't pay us. We didn't care because we thought it's cool. He goes, man, do you know your album's in the 1979 Playboy issue with Raquel Welch on the front?
What?
On 2 pages in between a girl's legs, with the Rolling Stones Red Album and ELO had a different color out. They were using colored albums.
Yeah.
And ours is in there twice on both pages. It says Granmax. You can look it up all you want. 1979, Raquel Welch is on the front. And,
R.I.P.
They didn't ask us for free promotion, but that's kind of why he did it. Yeah, just it's a promotional. Back then, you didn't do that a lot. And he was trying to push it, I think, to get it like, oh, wow, look at this,
Yeah. Well, a nickel well spent.
It was a nickel more. Yeah. I wanted to know whose legs they are, though. I got to be careful. My wife's right here.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, we're curious what earth-shattering recommended similar albums you have brought to suggest to our listeners.
All right. I got a couple of good ones here, and I imagine Lance might have a few additions after I'm done. But first up, something that I think the artwork reminds me a little bit of it. The music reminds me a little bit, and it's kind of an obscure hard rock record that isn't as expensive as it probably should be yet. White Witch, A Spiritual Gathering from 1974.
Amen.
Ooh, I've never heard of that one.
I don't know a ton about it. Lance, are you familiar with that record?
Yeah, of course. That one's great. That's a very good recommendation and an unsung. That's not a private issue album, but it is pretty obscure and it's great all the way through.
Yeah. Been seeing that one around for a long time, and it's always a fun listen. Next up is a record that I know Peter's into, Stars, self-titled from 1976.
Yeah, they're somewhere between power pop and glam rock. STARZ.
Correct. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of emphasis on the song with this Granmax record, so I wanted to get something that kind of has that more pop-leaning song structure on there, but still fully within the rock world of the mid-70s. And last suggestion, one that we have featured before, Paris, self-titled from 1976.
Oh, yeah. Bob Welch from Fleetwood Mac.
Correct. Doing his kind of Zeppelin-esque hard rock side project.
And to chime in, just since you asked me to, I'll chime in with Well, since we already mentioned Grand Funk, the best Grand Funk albums are not cheap, unfortunately, not anymore. But the live album, the double live album from 1970, is one of my favorite live albums of all time. It's a double LP, as I mentioned already. It's got really long versions of songs you're already familiar with if you know Grand Funk, and really just shows off. It's a good example of the prowess of that particular band. Another one that's pretty obscure and is kind of around the same time as Granmax's material is an album by a gentleman named Randy Orange. The album is titled Split Orange from 1979. I don't see it often, but it is cheap when I do. And I filed a copy a long time ago and have enjoyed it ever since then. It's also on colored vinyl, of course, on orange vinyl. Thanks, Randy Orange. And one that kind of leads us into the plugging part of the podcast is the Johnny Barnes Story album from 1980 by Johnny Barnes. That's a really cheap self-released album on his own label called Nightcrawler Records. And Johnny Barnes was featured on Brown Acid with his song Steel Rail Blues. That was on the sixth trip, the sixth volume of Brown Acid back in 2018. We've come a long way since then. We're about to release the 16th trip here in the next couple months. And yeah, that's one of the many things that I do is the Brown Acid compilation series.
Wow, cool.
Which is, for those who are uninitiated, Brown Acid is a compilation series that compiles late 60s and early 70s hard rock, heavy psych, and proto metal. In addition to Brown Acid, I also curate a heavy metal series of compilations called Scrap Metal. Scrap Metal is the natural progression of the Brown Acid series, where I compile heavy metal 45s from the late 70s and 80s, all private press singles, mostly done by bands that self-released one record and called it quits.
Wow.
Which is part of the reason why I got in touch with Tim, because I thought Granmax would fit in well on Brown Acid, and maybe we'll be able to work something out. But I'll give Tim the microphone now to promote what he's got coming on. Unfortunately, somebody beat me to the punch, and the Granmax albums are actually being reissued.
I got an offer about 4 months ago from Sonic Records. It's cult metal classic. They so far seem like they do a pretty fair job. I mean, and it's been so many years. I thought, well, nobody else has come forward, and and so they offered a fair deal, and they were going to get a lot of money off this stuff. I mean, and I just more wanted the reissue of the to be on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes, and Apple Music, and all that. So far we're working a deal out. It's kind of finalized, but it's not finalized yet. It's not on there yet. So it is finalized, but
Looking forward to seeing those reissues out there.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Well, yeah, Lance, thank you so much for hooking this up and bringing Tim on. It's, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Permanent Records in Los Angeles. I'm a frequent shopper there, and I live nowhere near Los Angeles. I've never been there, and that's because I follow you on Instagram at the @Permanent Records LA account, where you frequently, daily, post things in stock that you have, and all people have to do to claim them is comment with a spicy version of Dibs. I got a whole bunch of Carly Simon records for next to nothing recently. I've gotten some Melanie records, and even Bobby Gentry stuff for a pretty good deal. You care to elaborate on the spicy version of Dibs and at Permanent Records LA?
Absolutely, yeah. Like basically at the beginning of the pandemic, when our shops and the Permanent Records Roadhouse were shuttered, and just to kind of digress for a minute, the Permanent Records Roadhouse is a live music venue, a bar, and a record store all under one roof. We host live music 5 nights a week. We have touring bands, lots of incredible local bands, everyone from the OCs to Jay Mascis to Fred Armisen and Reggie Watts have performed there. And we're open from noon until midnight, 5 days a week. And if you are in LA or know someone that is in LA, you should send them our way. But in addition to what we do there, we take records out of our bins and put them up for sale on Instagram. Yeah, like Peter said, almost every night, and generally about 100 records a throw. And it's everything from I'd buy that for $1 fodder, cheap stuff, on up to records that are worth hundreds of dollars, and everything in between as well. So if you like to buy records and are in a place where you don't have access to them with ease, this is a very easy way for you to buy things. And it's about as easy as it gets. You're already on Instagram. You might as well just comment dibs on something that you like, and we'll ship it to your doorstep.
Yeah, just make sure that you don't just say dibs. You gotta like add something to it, or else the algorithm of Instagram will maybe blank you out.
Yeah.
I just saw right before we started, I saw a Canadian pressing of the Flying Burrito Brothers' Gilded Palace of Sin. I was like, ooh, I'm tempted. We'll see.
We get an amazing amount of rare and collectible used records on the rig. I travel far and wide. I buy record collections here locally every day, and then I also go to Europe and to other states in the U.S. to buy collections and visit record conventions and things. So the flow through our one store in LA is pretty incomparable, and I'm very proud of that. We've been in business for 16 years. Yeah, now the in 2019 the new chapter of Permanent Records began, and now it's like the Disneyland for record lovers.
That's awesome. And you had Nardwuar there.
Nardwuar, yeah, he was interviewing Don Tolliver in our store a few weeks back, and what an honor and treat it was to host Nardwuar, the man, the myth, the legend.
Doot doot do.
Doot.
All right, well, do we have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I have one. Those of you who are familiar with the Acid Archives, which is basically the Bible for private press records, should know that the Granmax is featured in the book. Oh yeah, Acid Archives is basically a compendium of private press LPs from the 60s through the 80s for the most part. And the quote from the Granmax section is that fans say that the addition of Nick Christopher is what made Kiss Heaven Goodbye such a leap forward from their less interesting and much easier to find debut album, A Ninth Alive. And although I think Kiss Heaven Goodbye is a great album as well, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't buy A Ninth Alive for any price, especially the kind of price you can get it for very easily on Discogs or in a store like mine. It's well worth the $8 or $5 or less that you'll have to pay for it. And I think we just showed you why.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming back, Lance. Thanks, Tim, for joining us and sharing all that info.
I just want to say, if I can, I want to thank, first of all, Lance for thinking of us and getting us on this podcast. That is super. And then, is it Sean?
Yep.
And I want to thank you so much for being involved. Are you in LA?
I am in Philadelphia, actually. We're all over the place today.
But thank you so much for being involved. That is super. And Jeremy, and you're in LA or?
No, me and Peter are in Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan, home of Gibson guitars.
Wow. Okay, I'm in Nashville. Yeah. Wow.
Which is
okay.
The new home of Gibson
the
guitars.
new home of Gibson, yeah. For the last 40 years.
Thank you so much for being involved. I am so psyched on this. Didn't expect it. And it's very cool. You guys do very good work. Very cool what you do. I thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on.
It's been an honor. This is a very cool new step for us on the podcast.
It was a very neat deal. Yeah. Thank you guys, man. Really. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Awesome. Well, what are we, what was the song we had queued up to go out on?
Take You Away is going to take us away, right?
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for listening to yet another installment of I'd Buy That for $1. My name is Peter Cook.
My name is Jeremy Ruggles.
I'm Sean Hartman.
And I'm Tim McCorkle, the Granmax. There you go. I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not, but
Yeah, yep.
That was perfect, Tim. And I'm Lance Barresi from Permanent Records.
There's no worry about tomorrow. There's no trouble in your life. Come, don't look into sorrow. 'Cause I'm coming to take you away. Lift your head and see my dream. Make your time